You're listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast with Ken Lucci of Driving Transactions and James Blaine of PAX Training. Learn how you can build a thriving transportation business with real profits, repeat clients, and enterprise value. And now for your hosts, Ken and James.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast. Today, we are absolutely going to nerd out on autonomous vehicles. I have heard people say it's not coming. We've got 10 years. We've got this. We've got that. There was a huge announcement today, and we're super excited to talk about it. Joined as always, I am with my amazing co-host, Ken. Ken, I know you're just as excited about this one as I am.
I am, because every single day, the data platforms that we use, you want to talk about nerding out, on Bloomberg Terminal, on our Dow Jones, Factiva, on D&B Hoovers, on PitchBook, I have alerts set up. Alerts for every possible subject that I want to look at, including autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and the specific companies. So every morning, when I started this a year ago with these databases, maybe once or twice a week, I'd get stuff on AVs, autonomous vehicles. Now I'm getting 3 or 4 news stories and analyst reports a day.
Yep, it is hot.
Red hot.
And I think, we've got an announcement that we'll cut to here in a little bit, but I know that we've had the news, Waymo's moving into New York. That was a recent one. We've got news that just broke today that we'll talk about in a second. There are so many things happening in that space that I think people have kind of made this, I call it an underestimation. Like, people think that in the tech world, things move on kind of a straight line. If I tried it today and it sucks, tomorrow it's going to suck. But tech leaps and bounds, right?
What's that law they call it? What's that law?
Moore's Law, I think is what you're talking about. So, of course, the resident nerd.
Wait a minute. You've cemented yourself in my mind as a techno nerd. I want you to explain to the studio audience. Wait a minute. We have no studio audience. To the audience, what that law is. Please take your time and explain it, because it's critical.
So Moore's Law basically explains that you're on an exponential scale when it comes to the power of computing. So when we're talking about a computer chip, and you think of, for those in the audience, you probably all remember the days when we had like Pentiums. I have the Pentium 1, I have the Pentium 2. Now we have, the Core i7, the Core i9. Apple has M1, M2, M3, and 4. What Moore's Law says is that it's going to double. So you don't go from going, 0 miles an hour to 1 mile an hour to 3 mile an hour. You start really jumping. And that's why if you start looking in computers, you start seeing, you might have, back in the day, we had 64 megahertz, and then it was 128, and then it was 512. And then, it just keeps bounding by doubling. And so roughly, depending on which version of that you want to apply, basically what it's saying is in a cycle of roughly 6 months to a year or so, that computing power doubles. And so when developers, when tech people are planning on stuff, it basically tells me that if I know I'm going to need twice as much computing power and tech power to do this as I currently have, is currently technologically available, I just have to get working on it now, knowing that the power I need, the computing power I need, will catch up because it's doubling, not incrementally going up. And that's exactly what I was talking about a second ago. Just because something was here yesterday doesn't mean it's going to do a linear jump. We saw it happen with AI. AI is just absolutely bounding all over the place. It's not a linear progression. So just to rein you in
a little bit, Moore's Law is not just about a computer chip. It's about technology advancement in general.
In general, right?
Yes. So let's put this into some reality. Waymo transports 250,000 passengers a week with 1,500 robo-taxis, and they are doubling the passenger service every 5 months. Whereas when they started, it was tiny. To James' point, when technology reaches a certain point, it exponentially grows in an extremely short period of time. And we're getting damn close to that exponential growth on the AV side.
Well, and there's something I think we need to really point out that a lot of people aren't grasping. These companies are data companies. So, I've ridden in Waymos, I've ridden in self-driving vehicles. I'll give you a great example. And, my buddy down the street has a Tesla and he's part of the full self-driving beta. So, I'm a hockey player. So we're going to the hockey store. I said, hey, you got the full self-driving. Let's see what he can do. He puts it in full self-driving mode. It backs out of the driveway. It starts driving. We get off the highway and there's a no turn on red. And it tries to run the no turn on red. And I go, got it. It's not ready. He goes, oh, no big deal. He pushes the little round part on the steering wheel, holds it down, and it goes, record your message for the developers. And he goes, hey, this was a no turn on red. It didn't identify the sign. It tried to make a right on red here. This is something that you guys need to look at and fix. And I said, wow, how long is that going to take? And he goes, it'll probably be next week. The next time I drive through here, it won't do that. Now, that easy.
Wait a minute. Stop there, because you've hit upon something that I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
Teslas are recording data and recording pictures.
Covered in cameras.
It's covered in cameras, and it's sending them back to Tesla.
Yep.
That data. Okay. So let's just set the tone for a second.
Yeah.
Everybody in the industry should know about Waymo. If you don't, Waymo is owned by Google. They operate a fleet of Jaguar SUVs.
Yep. E-Pace Jaguars.
E-Pace Jaguars that have all kinds of technology, Google technology on it. And it's LiDAR-based AV technology.
Yep.
Tesla just launched their Robo-taxi service in Austin, Texas. Oh, by the way, Waymo is in Phoenix, San Francisco, LA, Austin, and they are mapping 12 other cities, including New York, Boston, and Philadelphia this summer. Their goal, Waymo's goal, is to double their size of their fleet by the end of 2025, beginning of 2026.
They want all the major metropolitan areas.
All of them. Then you have Tesla's Robo-taxi. These are the two bigs in the United States, but it doesn't end with the United States. Tesla, talk about, if Waymo uses LiDAR, talk about LiDAR, not that I expect you to be an expert, and then talk about what you understand the Tesla, how the Tesla operates.
Okay, so you've got a couple things there, right? This is one of the few times that being in training and having a tech background pays off, because we can bring these things down.
And being a
nerd. Right, being a nerd doesn't help, right?
Yep.
So here's the thing. LiDAR is light-based radar. We are sending out light pulses. We are measuring the way they get back, and they're using it. Radar uses the same thing, only radio waves. So when you start looking at like radar-guided cruise, laser-assisted cruise, all of those technologies are using that. It's the exact same technology on the laser side. If you've ever seen one of those laser measuring tapes where you put it on the wall, you push the button, and it magically tells you, right? So what we're doing is we're doing this on a big scale. So LiDAR, same thing that's on your iPhone. We're putting out all these light pulses, and we're using that to take measurements of the real world, and we're using that to create a 3D map of the real world. Now, when you have a camera works the same way as your eye. We have two eyes in our head because we have to use those 2 points of view to give us depth perception. That's how you know how far something is. Your brain compares your left eye and your right eye, and it knows the difference between it. Since we're born, it just automatically does that, and that's how you know how far away something is.
And that's how Tesla operates with cameras.
And that's how Tesla operates. But
okay, so we have LiDAR. LiDAR is Coke. The Tesla camera and AI is Pepsi to me. It's an oversimplified, it's an orange and an apple. Well, right? That's the way my mind works because I'm oversimplified.
So
keep going.
Think about it more like an orange and an apple, right?
Okay.
Each has their advantage, each has their flavor, each has their level.
But explain the Tesla camera and AI concept as opposed to the LiDAR.
So here's the thing. In the beginning, we had LiDAR and camera. We're taking two different readings, we're comparing them to each other, and we're using that. Now, as humans, I mentioned the two eyes in your face. Typically, a lot of these systems have one or more cameras that they're using to try and map stuff out. And obviously, there's some tech there that your brain can't do that it can. But at some point, Elon decides, yeah, we're not going to do LiDAR anymore. We're going to cut those sensors out. Our cameras are good enough. We're visually seeing good enough. That's what humans do anyway. So they go to a non-LiDAR model. If you start looking at Waymo, if you start looking at these vehicles that kind of have the sensor arrays all over them, the little spinning thing on the top, all of that, that's going to be your LiDAR and other sensors. So again, oranges and apples. Tesla has done a really good job of getting the camera to work by processing it. And the whole thing is, and I won't jump the gun on this, but what you have to understand is we're at really kind of a central point where certain technologies have all merged and come together. You've got 5G internet, which is fast enough now, and LTE, which was kind of its predecessor, which is fast enough down to do a lot of real-time data stuff. You've got ARM processing, and you've got processors that do a lot of work with multiple tasks at the same time while using very little power. This is your Apple M1 through current M4 chips. Those are ARM.
By the way,
go ahead.
Is the Tesla vehicle data getting back to Tesla using 5G or some other way?
So it's going to send data with whatever connection it has, right?
Yep.
So when they started this about 20 years ago, my grandfather, who worked for Jet Propulsion Laboratories, the think tank of NASA, did a joint program with the Department of Transportation. And back then we were putting the tech in the road. The computer processing power needed was so big, it wouldn't fit in a car, right?
Sure.
So what did they do? They started embedding magnets in the road. And then all they have to do. Yeah. So basically at this point, we're making road trains. It's following the magnets like tracks. And then at that point, I don't really have to worry what's around me. I just at that point have to worry, okay, am I going to hit something and be looking out? And if I hit something, I slam the brakes. We're not talking about having to worry about changing lanes, all these other things. Back to kind of that point I made, as we've seen computer processing and all of these things get faster and more compact, and Moore's law has taken that computing power and shot it to the moon, right? For those of you that don't know, speaking of moonshot, you have more processing power in a calculator than we had to get to the moon back in the 60s. So now we can take that and it actually fits in the car. So the idea here is really simple. We cover the car in sensors, we have this thing in there, and now we're mapping it out. Well, this third magical element comes into play in about 2020. They already had AI, not in the way that we know it, but in the terms of machine learning and processing data and getting better. But in 2020, they make these giant leaps in AI. We start seeing the chat. We start seeing the modeling. We start seeing all of these multi-layer AIs like we never had before. So now I can take these massive amounts of data. I can extrapolate the information. I can get a model of it. I can get it to fit in a computer in the car. And now that car, having the right sensors, can drive. Like I said, a lot of them are using LiDAR, but you've got some like Tesla that are making it work with a camera. So that's kind of your playing field.
So that's the tie-in between the Tesla cameras and Grok AI.
So you've got some different pieces there. It's not that simple, but you've got Grok, you've got all these different AIs they're using to crunch the data. Yeah, exactly.
Keep it simple for the audience. Yep. LiDAR is very intense on the radar devices on the vehicle, whereas Tesla is using the cameras and sending the data and interpreting it in AI to do its mapping, correct?
Almost all the mapping is taking place on the vehicle, and they're comparing GPS data with what they're seeing around it and doing it there.
So in real time,
if we had to send it all up to the cell tower, you'd be toast, because as soon as you get a cell dropout, you're done. But what it's doing is it's essentially, think of it as if you're driving through somewhere new, and every time you get done, everybody comes back and tells you what they learned about the new place they drove, and you're making notes about it.
This is what I experienced on this route. And what I love about what you just said, as far as your buddy, is your buddy is pressing a button in real time saying, this is a problem with where we are right now. So it's constantly evolving and AI is changing it. Okay. So the interesting thing is, to me, is, Waymo and Tesla are the bigs. but there are probably 24 other companies in the United States. I'll just mention one is May Mobility,
Yep.
and they're mounting devices on standard vehicles. But to me, the news of AVs is actually more exciting everywhere else in the world. In addition to Waymo and Tesla, there's a company called Pony AI. Now, Pony AI is traded on NASDAQ, and its United States office is out in Silicon Valley, but it's basically a Chinese company. And Pony AI has massive fleets of autonomous vehicles in China.
Oh, China's huge in this.
It's huge. They are building EVs and AVs in mega factories in China that are the size of 100 football fields in size. And the manufacturing facilities that once manufactured cell phones are literally turning out EVs. So
it's the same tech. It's the same brains.
Right. Another name to watch is Pony AI. So recently, Pony AI Pony AI in China, the AVs, they say, well, they're all electric vehicles, and boy, that's going to be a charging nightmare. They actually have batteries that change cells. You don't charge the vehicle. You send the vehicle back to its depot for a 20-minute change of the battery, and you put in a fresh battery.
And they're starting to do that like drive-through, right? So think of how you swipe the battery off the bottom of your screw gun, right? You slide a new one in. You pull in, it's got an arm, it comes out, pulls the battery pack off the bottom, pops a new one on, and off you go.
So it's interesting to me how the TNCs are reacting, responding, and trying to figure out how to get AVs into their fleet. But let's set the tone. Waymo has its own app, Uber-like app. Tesla has its own Uber-like app.
Yep.
So contrary to what many in the limo software industry or the software providers in the limo space tell us, it's not really difficult to come up with an Uber app or a universal app.
And they're going to do to Uber what Uber did to the limo industry, right? That if Uber doesn't find a way to get on that same wave and ride it, right?
Correct.
Now, all of a sudden, it's before it was, oh man, the bus is going to hit us because now it's going to disrupt it. It's at this point, the taxi industry was already decimated. We took some hit. The people that didn't elevate their service, that didn't actually live up to the black car standard got hit. In my opinion, if you're a taxi guy, you really got to figure out how you're going to differentiate. Because this is the nail in the coffin.
It's incredibly difficult. What'll be left in the taxi space is what I call the unbankable, meaning someone who doesn't have a credit card or debit card, someone who doesn't have a smartphone, and all of the governmental programs, whether it's local, Medicaid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not going to be the general public. The general public, I think, would rather get into a clean Robo-taxi than a standard taxi with a driver. I think that's going to be a death knell for the industry, for the taxi industry. NEMT, give me your thought processes on non-emergency medical transportation. A big part of that service is the attendant.
Yeah. We've had this conversation a lot in the NEMT space, right? I'm lucky enough to be a member of TTA, and I sit on a committee there on the safety side. One of the things that comes up there is this ambulatory versus non-ambulatory. And for anyone that's not familiar with that, ambulatory is whether or not they're able to get into the vehicle, whether or not they need assistance. You start looking in NEMT, whether it's, curb to curb or it's door to door. Is it stretcher? Look, if you're doing the non-ambulatory, which is the people that need assistance, if you're doing stretcher, if you're doing things like that, I think you're in a good space. It's going to be a while before that, until we get to the point where you've got the Jetsons robot walking up to the door, which Elon's allegedly working on. I think you're all right.
I agree with that. I think where you're going to get hurt is I do think that ambulatory is going to be hurt pretty bad.
But Uber was already targeting that. And back to kind of the point I made earlier, Uber was already targeting that. But the way that Uber was a disruptor, the big thing here is that by having Waymo get ahead of it, now the keys to the car shift, so to speak, to Google, because Google could go out and all of a sudden your Ubers, your Lyfts, your rideshare companies are now having to compete with the largest tech company on the planet. So it makes a lot of sense that Uber and Lyft and those types of companies want to figure out how to get in on this. And most importantly, their biggest issue right now is the driver, right? Their biggest issue is having inventory, having drivers. The interesting part is, and people don't think about this, this will be a considerable shift to their structure because they don't own metal right now. If they go the direction of self-driving cars, now they're in the fleet game. Uber has not been in the fleet game.
And they need capital for that, which is the capital requirements are balanced by the fact that instead of now paying out to a driver 70% of the trip, allegedly, they're going to be able to use 70% of the trip for the AV. But here's the thing. Fleet operation does not begin and end with the vehicle being on the road. It's everything behind the scenes. I firmly believe, and we'll discuss our announcement that I think is going to affect the chauffeur space. I firmly believe that Waymo is going to get tired of building depots all over the place and managing fleet.
I disagree.
I think the fleet operators are in a good position if they can withstand the disruption. The larger fleet operators who have mastered how to buy, repair, maintain, and keep fleets on the road, I think there's going to be opportunity in autonomous. And, Waymo's extremely tight-lipped about it. But,
well, they're Google.
They also don't have to put together a P&L, okay? At some point, even Google is going to get tired of throwing money at this and not seeing a return on investment. Now, sadly, that can be a long time from now. Their staying power is incredible. Their staying power is even more so than Tesla. So you've got Waymo, Tesla, you've got Pony AI, you've got a bunch of other companies that are actually manufacturing.
Well, but there's a couple things there, Ken. So you've hit on like 4 huge topics, right? So you've got Tesla that already has service centers and sales centers. They already have that infrastructure. Now, on Google's side, I agree with you. Google, I think it's a toss-up whether or not they decide to do that. But the other thing is, if you look at like the line bikes and the scooters that we had, they a lot of times would employ people to go in at night, collect them all, charge them, and then take them back in. I agree with you. That could be an opportunity.
The cost of a scooter to manufacture and maintain, even if you lose them, is peanuts compared to, and Waymo's very tight-lipped about it. From what I understand, the cost of a Waymo is over $300,000 at this point. Now, they do have some deals going. Waymo has some deals going. The secret to Waymo is they're sitting on 3,476 patents globally on autonomous vehicle. So they're going to people like Hyundai and Toyota and others and putting that tech
there
in those vehicles. So I do think eventually, if you buy a Hyundai or Toyota and you want to deploy it into an autonomous fleet, which is what Tesla is promoting, I think you're going to be able to do it. And I do believe the cost is going to come way, way, way down, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Well, and Moore's law covers that, right? Because as the computing power doubles, the cost comes down. If you want the easiest example of that, look at flat screen TVs. You and I both remember TVs literally being, 5 feet deep so you could have the nice DLP projection. Now you can go buy an 80-inch flat screen LCD for $2,500 at Costco.
And you know what? And you don't give a shit if 2 years from now the thing doesn't work, you throw it away.
Because it's so cheap.
I agree with you. So when you look at the Waymos of the world and the Teslas of the world, there's no question that they're going to be able to deploy fleets and depot the fleets and maintain the fleets in major cities. The question is, are they going to want to do it in the metropolitan areas, below the top 50, or are they going to want to have a partner?
It'll be major cities. And here's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
One of the neat things that people don't think about, and the reason I brought up the scooter, is that the maintenance here is minimum. Because, all right, so my Jaguar E-Pace, I'm Waymo, my Jaguar E-Pace needs service. I make it drive itself to Jaguar. It's Jaguar's car, as long as it's not a failure on my tech. But guess what? Even if it is a failure on my tech, what do you have there? Trained guys that are used to electrical engines, complex vehicle components. As long as I make easy to replace, easy to swap out modules, that tech can swap modules all day. And guess what they're also used to? Tow trucks, go get it when it breaks down.
I was just going to say it. Now what you're doing is your auto dealership, whoever it is, and it's pronounced Jaguar, by the way, Jaguar, Toyota, Hyundai, they become the depot.
Right.
That's where the vehicles sleep at night. That's where the vehicles charge, to your point. So this evolution is going to be interesting. But I have to tell you, my conversations with operators are pretty interesting. And it almost harkens me back to the days when I was an operator and Uber came in and people were like, they're going to be out of business. This isn't going to catch on. And they're going to have to adhere to the regulations. Right. Right. Exactly. So, it reminds me of when I was in the security business, one of the biggest operators that I dealt with said, this Internet of Things, which, by the way, completely changed the security industry.
Yeah.
Oh, this Internet of Things is a fad. It's, we're always going to be running wires in people's houses. Are you kidding me? So anyway, I've spoken to quite a few people in the industry at the network level, stakeholders in the industry, and they're like, no, it's not going to affect the luxury space. And in my mind, listen, a lot of these people are my customers. I'm not going to sit there and argue with them over that. I argue enough with them over their financials. Anyway, I said, I'm not, I don't agree. And I say to myself, it's all going to change when somebody builds out an AV luxury model. And then it's so funny. We had Leonardo Gagno from Magis on another episode, and Leonardo brought this up. He said, Ken, Waymo is a luxury vehicle. They just didn't paint it the right scheme. And he's right. If you did a black Waymo and that Waymo was cleaned between rides and it was a higher level service, it is going to affect Chauffeur, but that's not the announcement.
But wait, so before we go to the announcement, you've hit on what and I'm in training. I come from tech. This is my world. I know this stuff like the back of my hand. Like I said, grew up with a grandfather that literally worked on this tech back when it was smart roads. This was basically bred into me to know tech. That's my world. But one of the things you've just brought up is that you still need someone to clean the vehicle. If I'm going to the airport at 4 a.m. and I've got a ton of stuff with me and my whole family, and it's just the vehicle showing up, versus if I know I've got someone in town that's going to send someone, that's going to take care of everything, that's going to basically now shift more to concierge role. If you're looking at autonomous and you're thinking, oh man, how do I not get hit by this bus? That's where, in my mind, you start thinking is, how do I provide service? How do I make it to where I'm able to leverage the people that I have to do things that I know even autonomous can't?
Well, and to your point, we'll get to that, because at the end of this, I am going to make some recommendations for every operator out there. But this week, in my mind, the game changed.
Big time.
And the game changed specifically with the announcement that Uber Technologies announced yesterday, that would be a Thursday, that it's partnering with the electric vehicle startup Lucid, Lucid.
The same electric vehicles that we see in the industry.
All right. Okay. And its stock price is LCID, and I'm going to get to the reason why I said that. And the self-driving software company Nuro, which to me is the biggest piece of the story. So they announced yesterday that Uber is partnering with Lucid. They're investing a few $100 million in Lucid, and they're going to have 20,000 of these vehicles on the road over the next few years. And at the same time, the announcement was made that these vehicles, one of the first places it's going to deploy in Dubai. And then the expectation is they are going to launch 20,000 of these vehicles in, quote, yet to be named major U.S. cities. So Uber has agreed to invest several hundred million.
I think it's
of
like
dollars
300 plus million. And
in Lucid
yeah. No. So it's split between Lucid and Nuro. And I think we have
and
a
Nuro.
clip we can cut to.
Lucid provides the gravity SUVs. You guys provide a part of the technology stack. Uber basically pays for everything. They've invested $300 million into Lucid, several $100 million into you. What happens next?
So Lucid is integrating Nuro's driver hardware component, so the sense and compute, into their vehicles on the production line. Those vehicles are then shipped to Uber. Uber owns and operates them, and Nuro driver's software provides the driving capability for those vehicles on the Uber network.
You have a very close relationship with NVIDIA. Essentially building on top of what NVIDIA offers end to end. Just explain it, because it seems like a bit of an unlock for you guys. And this deal kind of involves NVIDIA to a certain extent as well.
So all of the compute on this Robo-taxi platform is going to be based on
That's
NVIDIA's...
the Thor chipset.
The Thor SoC, that's right. And for us, for Nuro, that has dramatically simplified our overall compute, because before we had that system, we had to have FPGAs that dealt with the raw sensor data, we had to have CPUs, we had to have GPUs, we had to have safety computers. We've been able to effectively collapse all of that into the Thor SoC. So it's a simplification in the complexity as well as a significant reduction in cost.
Gravity goes into production late 2026, and 20,000 of them are due to Uber over a 6-year period. How do you get to public roads?
Nuro's been doing fully driverless operation on public roads for over 5 years now. So we have a lot of experience with what it takes to validate our tech and to get it out onto those roads safely. With the Lucid platform, it's obviously a new vehicle platform for us to work with. We got our first prototype in something like 7 weeks, which is unheard of. So we've been moving very, very quickly.
So Lucid's providing the sensor suite?
The sensor suite is Nuro driver hardware. So it's a sensor suite that Nuro has designed, although all of it is automotive grade sensing, off-the-shelf sensing. So Nuro has basically provided a design template for that, and Lucid is going to integrate that. For the prototype vehicles, where we're doing small-scale integration. For the 20,000 fleet, it's going to be integrated directly into the production line.
Nuro was very tight-lipped about the exact amount. I believe Lucid wasn't as tight-lipped, but I might be misquoting.
Well, Lucid, Lucid's not.
We're talking a big chunk of money.
Right. Lucid's stock skyrocketed 36%. And let's just stop with that, where that investment was yesterday. Anyway, the story to me behind this is Nuro. Okay. Nuro there's two guys that run Nuro, a guy named Dave Ferguson, and prior to Nuro, he was the principal engineer for guess who?
Go ahead, put them out of their misery.
Google self-driving program known as Waymo. Okay, he left Google to found Nuro. This guy has a master's in robotics and a PhD in robotics from Carnegie Mellon, and a bachelor's in computer science and mathematics from the University of Otago. He also has 100 patents to his name in autonomous vehicles, and he's published 60 academic papers. His partner is a guy named Jianzhu Zhu. I know I murdered that, but I apologize. This guy was a principal software engineer at Google, one of the founders of the self-driving program known as Waymo. In addition, he earned his master's and bachelor's in computer science from the University of Virginia, and he has over 100 patents also. To me, the story is not Lucid and Uber. Yeah, it's a little bit Uber. To me, the story is they took the Nuro tech, which they call Nuro Driver. This is the huge piece to me. And they put Nuro Driver in an ordinary Lucid EV. Well, there's nothing ordinary about a Lucid EV. They're gorgeous.
Right.
Okay.
But they basically bolted it on.
In 5 weeks, they had it on the road testing. Okay. That's huge.
There's something there too, because on this, you've got this leadership, and we've seen this a lot in Silicon Valley. Apple had a self-driving car program. Google's had a self-driving car. They've all been fighting over who they want. They're all fighting over AI engineers. One of the big things, and Nuro talks about this if you go look at them, is Nuro is using the Thor chip from NVIDIA. Now, I don't care if you're not a tech person. Anybody who bought NVIDIA stock has made money on it because NVIDIA is basically powering the AI movement.
100%.
I talked earlier about you have, ARM computing, you have 5G internet, and you have AI, and kind of them all hitting that right hockey stick moment where they've all just kind of crossed in scale and power. They are working very closely with NVIDIA, which means if they can dream up what they want it to do, NVIDIA is going to have chips they can give them and be able to optimize for it. And so you've got a huge, big backing on the tech side and the ability side. And now you've got money behind it.
So we've got the Lucid Air sedans, which go from 70,000 to 249,000 for the high performance Sapphire trim. Then you've got the Touring trim, the EV model, and the Touring trim starts at 78,900, and the Gran Turismo trim is 110,000.
Yep.
Okay. The Lucid Gravity is the electric SUV. It goes from 81,400 to 96,500.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the sake of argument, just say that the Nuro tech triples the cost of that unit. You've got a $300,000 piece of equipment that you can keep on the road. And if it does $200,000 a year in revenue, where your cost of goods is $70,000, it doesn't take long to pay for that vehicle and start getting an ROI. Now, I also want to share some internal news that is pretty wild. We, Driving Transactions, for the first time in the last 2 weeks, has gotten 2 customers who put AV vehicles in front of us to do financial pro formas. Okay, now what does that mean? They give us the cost of the vehicle. We do the fixed cost, variable cost. We do the revenue models. One of them is for college and university. Okay?
What's the number on those vehicles? What's the cost of acquisition?
Got to be careful. Can't say for
ballpark. And I'll throw one out to kind of help give you that.
It's between $300,000 and $400,000. Okay.
Because now to give you a point of reference, when I went to IATR a couple years ago, which those of you that don't know, that's the International Association of Transportation Regulators. Big shout out to my good friend Matt Doss, who runs that. Matt invited me out, and they were doing AVs one year. And when we asked what the cost
wait a minute,
was,
I got to stop you right there.
Okay.
Matt Dawes does not invite me anywhere. The business I've done with him, the business we do together, he's never so much as bought me a dinner. I apologize. I had to get that off my chest.
That's okay, Matt. If you're listening, you got to take care of my buddy Ken over here. We got to get him invited.
Never bought me a dinner.
If it makes you feel any better, the one time I could have been bought dinner by Matt, I missed. So
the business we've done together probably put the deposit on his house in Florida. It's okay. I'm not bitter. Go ahead.
I'm texting him on the side right now as we're recording. No, I'm kidding. No, so at Matt's conference, right, at ITR, the number that they gave when we asked how much a fully autonomous vehicle cost out the door was at $500,000.
Yeah, when was that?
I missed last year's, right? That was 2023. It was at $500,000. Ken, you're now telling me that you're seeing ballpark at 300,000. And this kind of goes back to that Moore's law. That tech is doubling. The cost is coming down. The amount of power you can get is changing. I mean, it's going to be big. Now, the other side of that I think is really important to note here is that the big question mark that is kind of sat out in the industry is who will be selling autonomous and will they keep it for themselves? You've got Tesla. You've got, I would expect Toyota is going to do it. You've got some that are kind
Excuse me.
There's an expectation.
It's pronounced Toyota and it's pronounced Jaguar. You said something wacky. Like you said Jaguar.
Yeah, you East Coast guys, you can't understand our Midwestern accent, I guess. But no, so the whole deal there is you're going to have people that are going to sell it. But I think the big question becomes, as you talked about with the patents, as you talked about what's there, I don't see Waymo taking their foot off the gas. I don't see Uber taking their foot off the gas. I don't see any of these doing it. But I think where we may see opportunities is their model right now is going to have to entirely rely on large cities. They're not going to be able to do small Midwestern towns. They're not going to be able
huge
to do
infrastructure
small areas.
builds and
huge infrastructure
builds.
These are not things that I think we're going to see mass adoption on. It's the exact same thing that we had with EVs when they first came out. You had to have charging stations. You had to have things there. And so I don't think it's going to eliminate it, but I can also tell you there's been some interesting talk about what's going to happen to Cruise, who we haven't mentioned yet. For those that don't know, Cruise was operated by GM on a similar model. Depending on what you've heard and what you read into it, what you want to do it doesn't sound like Cruise is going forward in the same way they were. And even when I was at IATR, the two sponsors there were Waymo and Cruise.
I thought they closed.
Well, and that's where I'm going with this, right? Waymo was pushing, Cruise was kind of lower end. But GM is not just going to take everything they learned and all that tech and throw it out, because they've already got Super Cruise. They've got pieces there.
To your point, for self-preservation, Uber has to dive into this.
They don't have a choice.
Okay. Waymo, this can be a rounding error on their P&L and balance sheet. They can do this for years to come.
Google has an entire list of projects it spent bank on, and then it's like, meh, didn't work out.
Right. But in this case, Waymo, there's nobody who can say to me that Waymo is not an initial success. In other words, when you do proof of concept, if you consider the first few cities proof of concept, it's doing extremely well. Now, the first ones that Waymo is displacing is Uber. There's no question about it. But if you ask the savvy operators in the cities, which I have, they do believe that it's costing them some money. And when I pose the question to them, what happens if there was a category of service that was exclusive and it was a luxury piece of equipment and it was attended to in between rides? Do you think it would hurt you then? And they're like, yeah, we do. We believe it will hurt us. So we've been, for the first time, we've been pulled into a couple of AV situations. An operator says to me this week, well, we're not big in the black car space. That's not going to hurt me. And I had to send him this because he's, I wanted him to understand it. The Uber of Southeast Asia is called Grab, G-R-A-B. And it is a smart app like you cannot imagine. It does banking, it does deliveries, it does so much stuff. It's not funny. It really is Uber on steroids. Grab just partnered with a company in Korea called, it's a full stack Korean autonomous vehicle tech manufacturer called Autonomous A to Z, to deploy the first autonomous electric shuttle in Singapore. Yeah. Okay. So that caused me to reach out to the stakeholders over at A to Z, and they were nice enough to, after the time zone difference, my question was simple. When will you be coming to the U.S.? And their answer to me is, we already have proposals in the U.S.
Yep.
And we are already approved as a AV testing company. The interesting thing about their partnership with Grab is part of this autonomous shuttle vehicle program is also partnered with the National Private Hire Vehicle Association to provide safety drivers. The safety drivers have to be on board the vehicle, okay, at least at this point. I couldn't get them to tell me where, but then I started doing more research on the shuttles. University of Michigan has got an autonomous shuttle program. Mississippi State University, Mississippi, not necessarily the bastion of technology or forward thinking, shall we say, is on the cutting edge with tech, innovation, and research, introducing an electric autonomous vehicle shuttle system pilot program on campus. And the shuttle is made by same company.
Well, but think about it. You've got places that are used to doing research, development, testing, education. What better place to test it? You've got all of these issues they already have with getting drivers, with running shifts, with everything there. If I can put a bus on that route that runs 24 hours a day, that doesn't get tired, that charges itself, does everything, we're good. And let's get some crap out of the way right now, because my favorite, and someone's thinking it right now, well, as soon as they run someone over, or as soon as they kill somebody, the problem is, even though they've had actual fatalities with AVs at this point, how many fatalities we see on the road with human drivers? How many accidents do we see with human drivers? How many times do we have issues?
You just uncovered their way into the market.
Yeah.
Remember that back in the day that Uber's big entry into the market was the sharing economy, and the ability to use the vehicles that are already on the road to lower carbon emissions. Well, it actually proved to be wrong, but it's
because they're all driving around in circles waiting for trips, but that's another episode.
Right, exactly. But to your point, the Autonomous Vehicle Association, and there is one, and I think everybody should, by the way, I think everybody in the industry should get involved. The Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association's mission is to advocate for the safe and timely deployment of autonomous vehicle technology. There is not a manufacturer, an auto manufacturer, that's not a member, and everybody we've been talking about is a member. And their entire persona, their entire messaging is to tell the federal government and the state governments that it is much safer to deploy autonomous technology than human beings. So, when everybody on the other end of this, are we doing this to scare you? No, we're not.
No,
because
not
I believe that, it is without question, it's going to be somewhat of a disruption. But if you are the operator that is going to the colleges and universities and you're bringing up, have you looked into any electric or any autonomous or anything else for your campus? You need to be the operator that they go to. I mean, this is another example. I have a client that does a ton of events in France. Recently, an event in France, WeRide and Renault partnered to put a robo-bus in the event. It was they basically closed the city for the event, from the parking areas and the hotels to the stadium. Okay. So.
And real quick, Ken, for anybody that doesn't know this, Renault is a brand of vehicle in France. They're very popular. They're all over Europe.
See, again, it's Renault. It's Renault. What is with your
it's Renault.
What is with your pronunciation?
It depends.
Anyway,
and then if we were in Spain, it would be Renault. It depends on which country you're in for the pronunciation.
I've learned something about you today. You really have a strange pronunciation of automobiles. I don't know what's
I got to find a younger co-host. Your hearing's going out, man. You're hearing everything wrong.
It is. So what's our point? What's my point with that? If I'm an operator today, a fleet operator, I'm looking at, I want to be involved in the regulatory process in my state. I want to get in touch with and become networked in with the Department of Transportation in my state. I want to make sure that I am networked in with every college and university, facilities manager. The facilities managers groups, associations are incredible, right? So I would want to be read in with what is going on everywhere around me. And I would want to be on the cutting edge and find a way to let it be known that you are looking into EV charging, you're looking into AVs, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that got me about Nuro Drive, getting back to that, going from 5 weeks of putting the Nuro Drive attachment, it kind of looks like an air conditioner on the top of that black SUV.
That's about right.
Putting that on top of a standard vehicle and getting it to testing.
So there's a couple things we haven't talked about there, and we It's going to be a little bit longer episode than usual, which is all right. But the bigger things that are coming into play, and it's going to matter more and more, is things like electric steering. Things where, it used to be there was a cable from your foot all the way to the engine to open the throttle body. And that's when the gas and, the air comes in and you get your power. Well, they started changing that. Now it's fly-by-wire. The planes started first, then they started doing it on cars. There's your gas pedal, if you have a newer vehicle, is a sensor. And then it opens the throttle body accordingly. The steering now is electric. It's not hydraulic. So what's going to happen with that? They're setting things up, whether inadvertently or on purpose, to where you can start plugging into those systems that control it, and you can start actually driving it and doing things there. And again, I think to your point, Ken, I've heard they're going to get hacked. They're going to kill somebody. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Look, when we started doing airplanes, people were like, oh, they're going to fall out of the sky. People are going to die. But this is the safest mode of travel. But when the Wright brothers were out at Kitty Hawk, everybody thought they were out of their mind. What happened? Time went by. The technology improved. Now it's common day. And so I don't think if you're a small operator, you're like, man, I got to go figure out how to buy an EV tomorrow or an AV tomorrow. But I do think if you are in the business, you need to be looking at, where am I going to have an opportunity to buy an AV? How do I find my niche? How am I going to keep an identity? How am I going to deal with this new technology and keep going? Because it's coming, whether you like it or not.
Oh, it totally is. And to your point, when you look at the automobile business back in the first automobile manufacturers, there were 3,200 of them in the United States. 3,200. Yeah. Okay. So I think you're at that much like the automobile business, the AV business, we're there, right?
Oh yeah.
There's all of these startups, and
they're racing. They're trying to get there first.
Right. Watch the ones that are the most promising. In my mind, Nuro AI just took a giant step forward. And NVIDIA, I agree with you on NVIDIA, by the way. I've been watching that stock. But anyway, if I'm an operator, give me your guess, and I'll tell you mine, on when we are going to see AVs go from...
Ooh. This is a good one.
No, let me set it up. AVs are going to go from a novelty to normalcy in the top 50 MSAs in this country. How long will it be? MSA is a metropolitan statistical area.
Yep. So let's talk about a couple things that haven't come up yet. One of the things that we have seen, and the reason that Waymo entering New York is such a big deal, is that typically AI relies on good weather. AV AI, right? Because one of the neat things that your brain can do is we can filter. So when it's raining, you don't try to track every single raindrop. Now, if you've got LiDAR, if you've got other systems, guess what? One of two things is going to happen. You either have to figure out how to filter all that out and ignore all of those raindrops instead of tracking them individually, or you have to figure out how to still do it. Guess what? If it's raining hard enough, if it's foggy enough, if conditions are bad enough, you have to pull over. But thankfully, the way the human brain is set up, we do an amazing job of just naturally adapting to that. Same thing happens in low light conditions. LiDAR really works great at night. A lot of those technologies work great at night because the camera starts getting low light images, the quality drops. So you have to have cameras that are designed to be able to handle low light, those types of things.
So your supposition is that they're going to struggle, the AVs are going to struggle with rain and snow.
Oh, I think it's going to be a hurdle like anything else. That's why we saw them launch in Phoenix. When Phoenix would have a dust storm, when it would rain in Phoenix, when weather was subpar, they'd bring them in. They wouldn't run them. And I've been told, right, I haven't been there when this happened. When I was in Phoenix, it was all nice weather. But I've been told that people have been riding in Waymos and it starts raining. And the Waymo basically pulls over and goes, hey, bud, sorry, it's not safe to keep going. Now, they have spent a ton of time, a ton of money in everywhere from Finland and Sweden to Canada to the northern United States trying to adapt to weather. And here's the thing. I think we're already at the point where we've seen them grow from Phoenix to Los Angeles to Austin to all of those. I think we're probably in novelty mode for about 5 years. It has taken 5 years, and I want everybody that's listening to think about this. ChatGPT came out in 2020. How many people right now don't have it as some part of their life? Apple's integrated it into their email, into the iPhone, into Windows, and it's literally gone into everything. And when it came out, it was like this new toy that we've played with. 5 years down the road, we're not there. It used to be that models, right? I've always been a Mustang guy. Sorry, Camaro people. But it used to be that Ford would update and change the Mustang design every 5 years, right? Probably somewhere in that 5 to 8 range is a typical life cycle of a body style of a model of vehicle. So if we look at that and we say, okay, once it gets into the main major cities and we've overcome the hurdles, we can assume that within 5 to 8 years, the new model vehicles are coming out. If you've got Nuro, if you've got all of these other options to just strap sensors onto it, you're absolutely kidding yourself if you don't think that at the proving grounds, companies are already strapping on and they're already working on that 5 to 8 year from now vehicle. We've got Super Cruise and GM. We've got lane assist, right? You've got all of these things to where you basically get on the highway, you push go, and even a brand new Kia drives itself down the highway if you put on the cruise.
Okay, so I'm going to amend. I'm going to slightly disagree.
Okay.
I think within 3 years, you're going to see major institutions and closed campuses and closed communities look at the AV model to replace their public transit, student transit.
I agree with that. I think it probably 4 years probably is my guess on that.
I also think that within 5 years, you'll see the top 20 MSAs with fleets of these things in them, fleets of them within 5 years. And that's as far as I'm willing to go. I'm not read up enough on it. I would love if anybody in this audience knows Dave Ferguson from Nuro.
Oh
AI.
yeah, no, we'd love to have him on.
I would love to have him on. I would love to get one of the AV people from the TNCs on, if I'm still not on a watch list inside their companies, but that's okay. Never mind. At least one of them is, somewhat friendly.
So would you agree that 10 years is kind of where I think within 10 years,
oh yeah,
we're going to see them commonplace.
Absolutely.
Be commonplace to see AV.
Absolutely.
And I think that's beyond just, rideshare. I think within 10 years, you'll be able to go to pretty much any dealership and buy your own self-driving vehicle.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm a little concerned because I'm watching the Tesla. Tesla has several fatality lawsuits from the autopilot. One is big in Miami.
Yep.
And I'm watching that because I want to see what the verdict is, because Tesla's defense is the terms and conditions by which they sold the autopilot, and supposedly it's a different system than their autonomous system. Anyway, I'm watching that.
Well,
and the other piece that we have not talked about is the reaction of the insurance industry, which,
I think the insurance industry is going to embrace it, but I think you brought up a huge point, because right now Tesla's full self-driving is a beta. You're supposed to be hands on the wheel, driving the car, paying attention, but it's not uncommon to see people treating it like it's, mainstay. And I think back, and I don't know if this story is true or not, but the story that I was told was that when RVs first came out, they had autopilot, and you would put on autopilot. And it was really just a really bad name for cruise control. And so they had a couple accidents where people put on the autopilot and then went in the back of the RV to make dinner and crashed and died. Now, whether or not that's true, but it's the right thought process.
No. Listen, I believe it because people are inherently stupid. I mean, I'm sorry. You call it an autopilot.
You're not wrong.
And my mind goes immediately to the autopilots in planes.
Yeah.
And when we get to this point where AVs become more normal, do I think that you're going to see a 56 passenger AV motor coach without a pilot? No, I don't. For the same reason why Boeing, the Boeings can take off and land without the pilot. Okay.
Oh,
But
but you must not have been watching the Airline Pilots Association, because they are fighting right now to keep 2 pilots in. By the way, I 100% support the Airline
I think that
Pilots Association.
there's no way. I think they're going to win it.
Right?
No.
They want to go down to a single pilot.
Well, here's what shoots that in the face, right? Okay.
Right. And that's Boeing, right? The Airline Pilots Association wants 2. But
okay.
Boeing
Well,
and the
Boeing wants
manufacturers
it.
want
Wait a minute.
1.
Let's just say this right now. Does Boeing really have a fucking track record for safety that we want to follow?
No.
Those are falling out of the sky.
Yeah, I don't. And,
Right.
and here's, but to the point, right? People are like, oh my God, you kill someone and AVs are going to be done. Boeing's planes were crashing themselves and we're still flying on them.
Exactly right. But so here's why the one pilot doesn't work. Okay. The average pilot I see going through the airport is 25 pounds overweight. He's eating fast food. He hasn't slept, right?
Yeah.
You want to put the lives of 300 people in the hands of a walking coronary? I'll take those odds all day long. 2 pilots. And you know what? If Boeing
You hear that,
wins,
Airline Pilots Association? We support you.
if Boeing wins this argument, I'll never fly again. I'll fly with Bobby Bellagamba, who owns his own plane. I sold his company, and I told him that I wrote in invisible ink that he has to give me flights anywhere I want in his private plane. But no, it doesn't, and it's a law of probability. If you're responsible for 56 people, I'm sorry, that motor coach is going to have a pilot. It's going to always have a pilot.
But I think that role's going to change, Ken.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
And that's where I was saying the opportunity is earlier. In my mind, when I think about the future, the way I envision it is you are most likely going to go to a hotel-like model where there's a concierge at the airport that helps you unload your luggage, that helps you there. And then if you have someone doing and again, this is going to be super luxury, not your everyday guy. But if you have a high-end person that needs something there, you're going to have someone help load the vehicle, help get them there. But the big thing, and this is my concern with that and my view on that, I don't have an answer to it, is people are not looking, and by the way, anybody that has chauffeurs, people are not looking for a friend to ride with the vast majority of the time. One of the biggest problems that I see time and time again is that people that are providing luxury service have chauffeurs, drivers, whatever role it is, that think they're there to entertain and not serve. And my one concern is if the car's driving itself and I have a concierge in the vehicle, they're going to innately want to converse and entertain and be that person. And so I think the big question mark right now is, what does that look like? Because you got to think about it. Your biggest, most important VIP, do you really see them going on a big trip with a bunch of luggage, schlepping all their stuff into the back of the vehicle, and then schlepping it into their private aircraft?
No, I don't. I see that being a luxury. I think it's a luxury AV. It's with a ticker in the back or with financial news playing. It's absolutely a rock solid Wi-Fi connection, etc. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I see those amenities coming. And I had a strong disagreement with an operator who said, Ken, we can be in the business for the next 30 years and those are not going to affect us. I said, you're dead wrong. I said, you're dead wrong. And there is a hydrogen powered Rolls-Royce. Okay.
Yep.
Rolls-Royce is saying no more EVs. They're going right to hydrogen. Okay. Rolls-Royce, and this is, Rolls-Royce is in talks with some AV technology people, but the issue with Rolls-Royce is you must build it in. It cannot look like it's attached. It has to be built in.
Can't have an air conditioner looking unit on the roof with sensors on it. They're going to build it.
It's coming.
But if you think about it, and to your point, right, Tesla has been probably one of the most forward thinking, because Tesla was putting all the sensors built into the design, already there, already ready.
Not telling you why.
And then part of their, now, this could be a whole, user agreements could be a whole series, right? But what you don't realize is when you're getting into any of these vehicles, your user agreement basically says you are allowing us to mine all the data. We're basically tracking your car, everything it does. So the more of them they sell, the better it's going to get. And again, back to Moore's law, it's going to really hockey stick and go straight up in the next couple years. If you really think it's going to be 30 years, I really
No
hope
way.
you're in a rural area.
Yeah.
And I really hope you're somewhere where you've got older clientele that are terrified of technology. Because even people that hate tech, it is alarming how fast they'll go from, oh my God, that's so stupid, that's so unsafe, to, oh, I didn't really want to, but I rode in one and it was okay, to, I rode in it the second time, to the third time, oh yeah, this is awesome, this is my new thing.
And I think you have to open up your mind because, the university that's near me here, I mean, I have to go off the Eastern Shore by 2 hours to get my teeth worked on. The university here, Waymo, is absolutely not going to put a depot, but some entrepreneur will sign a 7-8 year agreement with this university and supply them with their on-campus transportation, the AVs to come downtown to where their big student buildings are, et cetera. There will be use cases where our fleet operators, the ones that are savvy and prepared, and by the way, well-financed, will benefit eventually from AVs. Well, listen, we've kicked the crap out of this hour as usual. Very spirited. You kind of went off on a little bit of a tech nerd thing there, which is fine.
Got to know what's coming. Got to understand what you're
thank you
dealing
for
with.
explaining. Thank you for explaining the hydraulic steering wheel versus. It's wonderful to be enlightened. This has been another exciting episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast with my techno nerd sidekick, James Blaine, who will be, I'm sure, at some point training AVs.
I don't know about training AVs, but I will
AV
tell
attendants.
you, yeah, if you've gotten anything out of this podcast, I think the thing you should get is that we are not going to a point anytime soon where customer service loses the human aspect.
Agreed.
And making sure that people are living up to that aspect and can provide the service is huge. So I think in our world, that's where I see the shift is there will be a lot of focus on understanding the technology, how to provide service, and who knows, maybe even at some point how to service the vehicle.
Listen, I hope I'll be retired by then. 5 more years, baby. That's it. Unless the big one comes in. When that big one comes in, I'm out.
There you go.
All right, guys. We'll see you again next week on another exciting episode of the Ground Transportation Podcast.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Ground Transportation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about PAX Training and to contact James, go to paxtraining.com. And for more information about driving transactions and to contact Ken, go to drivingtransactions.com. We'll see you next time on the Ground Transportation Podcast.